Well, I think we're rolling finally, folks. Hey, welcome back to Bookish, your virtual program on authors, thinkers, and the literary life, brought to you by the Southern California News Group and the Bay Area News Group. I am, as always, Sam Dunn, the senior editor of premium content here. And of course, I have to begin by giving a big thank you to our Reader Rewards subscribers for supporting our programs, and really everything we do. We couldn't do it without you, so thank you. And if you are a Reader Rewards subscriber attending tonight, you are, as always, automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate from Once Upon a Time Bookstore in Montrose. And our winner last month was, drumroll please, Linda Condelli. Linda, we hope you're enjoying those books. And now let's have some real talk, you guys. If you're not a subscriber yet, why aren't you a subscriber? In Southern California, please go to scng.com/subscribe and find your local paper and join us, please. In the Bay Area, go to bayareanewsgroup.com/reader services. Please become a stakeholder in local journalism. We need you and we appreciate you. Also, if you've missed our past programs, go to scng.com/virtual programs and check those out, please. Also, while you're checking things out, look at our very cool Bookish swag for us stylish book nerds. Before we get started, I have a few things, as always, to remind you of. If you have questions, please use the Q&A feature on your Zoom toolbar there at the bottom. If you just want to add a comment, use the chat feature also found on your screen. But if you put a question in the chat, I'm not going to see it. So please use the Q&A. And really, if you've got to get up and let the dog out or do whatever you need to do, don't worry, you're not going to miss anything, because a link to the show is going to be sent to you later. And the show is also posted at scng.com/virtual events, as well as on YouTube. And at this point, I'm usually about to introduce our longtime host and my friend Sandra Singlo, but wouldn't you know it, she's off in London producing plays right now, and that's what she's going to be doing for the foreseeable future. And we certainly wish her the best, and we're going to see her back here occasionally. But meanwhile, as you're about to see, the show has totally gone to the dogs today in the best possible way, which leads me to our first guest, again, another longtime friend, Cathryn Michon. And give me a second, Cathryn. I have to run through all of your incredible accomplishments. Cathryn Michon is an award-winning comic actress, director, screenwriter, and book author who got her start in the touring company of Chicago's famed Second City. She has also been a writer for Emmy Award-winning television series, and with her writing partner and husband, Bruce Cameron, a screenwriter of feature films like A Dog's Purpose, A Dog's Way Home, and A Dog's Purpose 2, A Dog's Journey. Way back in the day, she was the host of AMC's cult hit Girl Genius at the Movies, where she showed some of the greatest chick flicks of all time and highlighted the genius of women in film, which is kind of a theme in Cathryn's life, if you will see. She co-directed, co-wrote, produced, and starred in the Cook-Off movie, which was adapted from her best-selling book, The Girl Genius Guide to Life. And she also co-wrote, directed, produced, and stars in the movie Muffin Top, A Love Story, which was adapted from her novel, The Girl Genius Guide to Sex with Other People. Now she's out with her most recent book, the newest in the Dog's Purpose franchise, I'm Still Here, A Dog's Purpose Forever, which is an illustrated story of enduring love. And Cathryn, it is an amazing book. Let me just hold it up for a minute.
I'll hold it up too.
Yeah, you too. We have matching books. It is, listen, as I was telling you before we started, I lost our beautiful Juno, our husky, who we had for 12 years last week. And there is really no way to talk about that kind of grief. But your book does that, and it explains it in such an amazing way. Before we get to the particulars of the book, I want you to kind of circle around and talk about how this book even began. It has its roots in the beginning of A Dog's Purpose.
Well, it does, and it very much involves this sleepy puppy, who's also the cover dog
model.
The cover model. Yeah, there is. So A Dog's Purpose, which is a classic novel that my husband wrote, started as a story that he told me on a car ride, because we were first dating, and I had lost my beautiful Doberman Ellie. She died young, and I'd never had a dog before. And we were on our way to go meet the parents, which is as scary as it is in that movie, right?
Your parents.
My parents.
Yeah,
My
I think I remember this. Yes,
So
he was going to make his introduction to your parents. No
yeah.
pressure there. No pressure.
We were old, we're old people. Like, it's like, I got married at 40. It's like, oh, it's like, no one should have to do that. Anyway, so we're on our way up to see them. And randomly, I don't know why, I said, by the way, I can never have another dog. I can't go through that again. Can't do it. Off the table. And he comes from a crazy dog family where his dad, who was a surgeon, like cooked for the dogs, and like, and he has often said, I was just trying to think of where was the next gas station where I could drop this girl off because I'm out. Like, I can't do it. and then because he's a natural storyteller, this has never happened before since a story dropped into his head, fully formed, of a dog who reincarnates and remembers all of his lives and his people and comes back to life to save his original boy. And that's the novel A Dog's Purpose and what became the movie A Dog's Purpose. And anyway, he told it to me on this car ride, and for an hour and a half, he talked. And at the end, I was in tears. And then I said, oh my God, I understand what you're telling me. These creatures have eternal souls just like we do. And this is a forever relationship. And maybe my dog will come back to me, or maybe my dog will send me another dog, but I should open my heart to another dog. I get it. I said, but that's, you need to write that as a novel. So I'm worried. You need to record it because it's so good. So he had a recording stick, and then he talks for another hour and a half. He tells the story again. I'm like, okay, I've heard enough of that story for one day. It's beautiful, but no, thank you. And and he always says, I like the story so much I married him. I mean, I did. I did like the story.
I was gonna make you marry him even if you didn't like him.
I had to marry him. But the thing is, so that book has existed. It's the 15-year anniversary next year of that book. Oh. And all this time, we always thought, though, that there ought to be sort of a companion book, a gift book, a graphic book, a book that would be full of beautiful art and would be told in free verse, that would be from the point of view of that angel dog who's over the rainbow bridge, telling you that they are still here, but they are also there with all the souls you've loved, and that this relationship is forever. So he asked me to write this book. A lot of people are like,
that was my next question. How did that happen for you? Yeah.
He asked me to write it. He said, because I do write free verse poetry, not for, a job or anything, but just because I like to do it, and also free verse poetry, especially in this form, it's basically dialogue, Yes. It's laid out in a pretty way, but it's just the dog talking to you. And I've written 3 movies where the dog talks. Like a dog, like only what dogs understand. It's not an anthropomorphized dog, And so he said, I just think you should write it. And, then we had a pandemic and 2 strikes, and I did. So
convenient. What is it about this relationship with dogs? I mean, now you have written these 3 movies, this book, your husband has written umpteen dog. How many are in the dog?
Well, he's published 35 books. So
right.
I'm sorry, the cops are coming for me. Part of what I think it is, because you know what, there are books. You can buy a book from a psychologist about dog grief, of the loss of a family member who happens to be a dog, but nobody has ever told you what the dog thinks about it.
Yeah.
And the dog's opinions are very surprising, because people always say, why must it be that they don't live as long as we do? And in this book, the dog's opinion is that that's perfect, because that way they go first and they can show us that it's no big deal. Yeah. And that they will be there to meet us when we cross over the bridge. And so there's so many things that the dog tells us in this book that are so hopeful and joyful. And on that day, one day, this perfect creature will leave me.
He's
And
looking at you like, what are you talking about?
not,
Anyway,
dinner, and then maybe we could talk about it. Yeah. First chicken, and then maybe.
chicken plays a role in these pages. I will have you know, people.
Very important in this book.
Chicken's very important.
You know, and then the thing, the dog has like these other really wise things to say. He's like, people spend too much time in fear. I don't understand why. Dogs are, we have fear. We fear things like bats, which are horrible, but then the bath ends and then we let go of it. But humans seem to stay with fear like for days on end, you know, and you know, because Tucker doesn't think about taxes or the mortgage or, you know, like he doesn't. At the end of our movie, A Dog's Purpose, the dog rather simply says, be here.
No.
And
Yes.
that's the essence of I'm Still Here, A Dog's Purpose Forever, is that these are spiritual teachers. I think they understand spiritual life far better than we do because they spend most of their time in joy.
Yes.
You know, and if you listen to them, they will make you a better person, you know.
Okay, don't make me cry because you're about to make me cry.
Well, I know you just lost your dog,
I
and
did.
it's not the message you want to hear today, maybe, but part of what the dog says in my book, I'm Still Here, A Dog's Purpose Forever, is that they very much at the end of their lives want you to open your heart to another dog because they can't imagine you without a dog because you need a dog. Like it's their purpose to guide you and they want to make sure you have that. And so I always tell people, of course, I don't expect you to run out to a shelter today and get another dog. But when you're walking down the street and a dog comes towards you and they're all waggy and happy, bend down and say hi to that dog, especially at this time, because they just want you to feel that dog energy and love and connection to the universe, and just allow yourself to do that. And if you cry in front of the neighbor whose dog you petted, well, so what? They'll get over it.
Okay, I'm seriously, I'm the host of this show right now, and I'm seriously wiping tears from my eyes. Thank you so much. Well, this is so ironic because this is not ironic. This is so meaningful because I know you yourself have gone on exactly this journey. I remember when your beautiful Doberman Ellie died. We've been friends for that long, and it was incredibly, it was at a time in your life when everything else was
dying.
Everything else was dying too. It was a really difficult moment. And so the impulse to shut your heart was understandable. And now 15 years later, more than 15 years later, you're at this place where you have created this book for all of us, all of millions of us who.
Yesterday, I had a very important show business meeting. And sometimes when I do, I will send him to his dog sitter the night before. So I'm just not, you know, worried about him. And it was in Burbank and, you know, whatever. And just not having him in the house when I woke up in the morning,
Felt weird.
But then I remembered the message of this book, which is that they want us to embrace life. Temple Grandin says animals make us human, and they really do. They bring us to the best of what we can be because we have powers they don't have, you know, and that's why we have to take care of them. We co-evolve them. Tucker can't go out on the veldt and bring down a water buffalo, you know, like he's you know, he
don't underestimate him, by the way, but yes, I see your point. I see your point.
Yeah, really, you know, it's not gonna happen. So like I owe him everything he needs to live, but he's giving me everything I need to live, to be the best, most evolved, most open-hearted person I can be. That's what they do.
Thank you, Cathryn. Speaking of Tucker, can you tell the story briefly of how Tucker came to you?
Oh
I love this.
It's a good story.
And it also ties into our next guest, Carol Mithers, and her rescue.
Well, of course, we're a rescue family, and my stepdaughter Georgia Lee, who is just such a kick-ass. She's a Denver cop. She's a single mom of 3 kids. 2 of them are twins. You don't even want to go in that house. But like, she also runs a rescue in Denver, and she got a call from a local shelter saying that there had been these 4 puppies that were dropped off overnight on a cold Denver night in a cardboard box, eyes closed, still slick from birth. And the workers came in the next morning and they don't have the resources to bottle feed. And they asked if there was anything she could do because she's kind of this known to be this last chance rescue lady in Denver. And she said, well, I have a German Shepherd who has just weaned her pups, but she has a broken leg and I have to keep her crated. So we could just try it. So they put in these
switcheroo
yellow blobs, and she was like, oh God, I guess I had a wild night at the Sigma Chi house, and here I am again, and like just rolled over with a heavy sigh and started nursing that. So I have pictures of Tucker and his brothers, these 4 little yellow blobs on this German Shepherd dog. And
then he made his way to you.
And then he made his way to me. I said I didn't want him. I said I would get my own dog from a rescue here in California. And she said, I'll be there Wednesday. She got on a Southwest flight and she got my dog. And she put him in my arms. And like all the way to the airport, I'm like, look, the dog can stay for the weekend. We'll hang out, like, and then she can go back with the dog because we're not ready. And she put the dog in my arms. My dog.
My baby.
That's how much resistance I put up.
Yeah, you're known to be such a hard-nosed toughie.
But he's the perfect dog for me. And it's so amazing because I'm still here. My dog's purpose forever. He was the model for the angel dog. So we designed this book specifically. This front leaf is my footprints and his paw prints in the sand. And this is the place where you can mount a photo of your angel dog so that you can have a copy of the book and know that it's for them. But, that's a puppy picture of him, that's him in a cone, very unhappy.
Yeah, very
so
unhappy.
we do all this modeling, which he loved, by the way, because he gets paid in cheese. So,
well,
he was on.
Give me Gouda and everything's okay.
Yeah.
2 more questions, because this is such a beautifully rendered and illustrated book. It just draws you through the whole story. I could see it being an animated something or other. Is that on the...
I'm definitely going to turn this book into a movie. I may turn it into a live action movie because for me, it's an angel dog, and I love angel movies. I mean, It's a Wonderful Life, Heaven Can Wait, Meet Joe. I want it to be that a dog who is still here is like his mistress was like how I was when I lost my first dog, a sad single girl, and he thinks she needs another dog and she needs a new mate. So
a little autobiography on the side. Anyway, where can we enjoy this book, Cathryn?
This book can be bought anywhere fine books are sold. If you pre-order it, you will be able to get a first edition. They've already ordered 2 more printings because they underestimated us a little bit.
As they often do.
If you want a first edition, collectible first edition, you need to pre-order it right now from anywhere. You will get a first edition. With A Dog's Purpose, which was a book that was dedicated to me, I gave away all our first editions. And so then I had to buy one on eBay for $200 because I didn't have one. So don't let that happen to you. And then I also want to tell people that we're doing an amazing open to the public book event September 7th at the Wallace Annenberg Pet Space, where we'll be celebrating this book. And my husband, who publishes a book every 5 minutes, also has a book out called Ripley Fire Station 5, which is about a fire dog. It's a children's book. And we're going to have beautiful food and festive beverages, and we're going to be performing. And we're going to have...
There's more? There's more?
There's more. We're going to have a squadron of hunky firefighters at the event. So I really don't know how you cannot come.
Well, I was going to come for the dogs, but I'll stay for the firefighters.
Stay for the firefighters, yes. So it's going to be, it's an amazing place, and you can actually bring your dog to the event. It's a pet-friendly event.
Or you can adopt a pet while you're there.
Or you can go home with your new best friend because the Wallace Annenberg Pet Space is also a rescue. So. In
Cathryn,
addition to this gorgeous, as you said, Taj Mahal of the human-animal bond, it's nicer than the Academy Museum. It's the most beautiful place I've ever been.
yeah.
So I'm really excited. We don't often get to have an event in a big place where the public can come. We do it in bookstores, and it's crowded and cramped, and there's little cheese cubes, and it's not that great. So this,
There's wine in plastic cups.
yeah, this is going to be much more fun.
Classy. I'll see you there. Thank you so much. And Tucker, thank you. I know he looks very excited by the whole conversation. Anyway,
Dynamic media presence, isn't he?
my love to all of you, and thanks again. Congratulations on this new book.
Thank you. I'm so glad you like it. I know you would say
I do.
I can tell you do.
And sadly, it came at a perfect time.
Yeah, I'm sorry for that.
So speaking of rescue, next up, I'd like to introduce our next guest, Carol Mithers. Carol is a widely published journalist whose work has appeared in the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, Washington Post, and the LA Weekly, and many other places, as well as in magazines including Dame, Smithsonian, O, the Oprah Magazine, Architectural Digest, Ladies' Home Journal, Glamour, The Nation, Salon, The Daily Beast, and so many others. She's a very respected journalist. She's also the author of 3 books, including Mighty B.R. Powers, written with Nobel Peace Prize laureate Lema Gowibi. Am I saying?
Bowie.
Thank you. The book was a finalist for the Dayton Literary Peace Prize and was reprinted in 14 languages. Today, Carol joins us to talk about her newest book, some book that I could not put down, by the way. We'll talk more about this. Rethinking Rescue, Dog Lady, and the Story of America's Forgotten People and Pets. Carol, thank you so much for coming. I can't even tell you.
Hi, good to see you.
Oh, it was so good to see you. Listen, I'm going to be completely honest about this book. I didn't know if I could get through a tough book about rescue because of my love of dogs, my love of animals.
Yeah.
I put this book down. It was so incredibly compelling and edifying. Pardon?
That was not me. I don't know who that was.
There was a little blur.
A little comment from the background. Yes.
The peanut gallery talking to us here. So the book, let's just begin. The book centers on Lori Weiss, who is the dog lady, the founder of Downtown Dog Rescue. And what she did was radically reframe the conversation around rescue. I want to talk about that, but I also want to talk about how did you come to discover Lori's work, and what made you think that this would be a book you could do?
I met Lori when I got intrigued by the notion of animal hoarding. I read a story about it in the paper and I'd never heard of it. And it was sort of so awful, I couldn't look away.
Yeah.
And I started investigating it. And a friend of mine from middle school, who I'd recently reconnected with, knows Lori and is herself a dog rescuer and the godmother of my own dog, my own rescue dog. And she suggested I talk to Lori. So we met downtown when she was still at the Modernica factory downtown. And she told me what I needed to know. And I eventually wrote that story. But she had also talked to me about all the work she was doing downtown with unhoused pet owners. And she had a kennel behind the factory. And she had just started doing work on what was called shelter intervention, where she got people positioned a counselor at a very busy shelter to try to find out why people were turning in their animals. And was there anything she could do, the organization could do, to change their minds and to stop them? And I just thought this was really fascinating. And at first, I really thought this was just going to be a regular rescue story, which I think we all know at this point. They're a really sad dog and it's in misery and somebody was mean to it and somebody else comes along and saves it and takes it to a better life. I mean, I'd gotten books like that as a freelancer. People would send them to me wanting me to write about it. But the more I talked to her, the more I realized that wasn't the story. The story was not where the dog ended up, but where the dog began. Who were those people? And what happened, the reasons they were losing their dogs or not taking care of them in ways that maybe I would consider right. that was the story. They had their own reasons and their own stories.
It was amazing. Lori put it best. Full shelters are not a pet problem or a people problem, but a poverty problem. And I thought this was so enlightening. Your book is one of these books that really reframes how you see things.
I hope so. I hope so.
Really, because pets, I have my notes here. I'm just going to look at them for just a second, because the work illuminated the fact that pets are really at the nexus of all of these societal issues, right? A housing crisis, the widening gap between rich and poor. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Well, the pets that end up in the shelter, not every pet, and there are some genuinely people who are genuinely horrible to their animals and who should lose them. But a lot of the pets that end up in shelters are there because maybe they escaped a crowded yard and were picked up by animal control, and the people who owned them originally just simply didn't have the money to reclaim them. They're there because they got sick, and maybe people even got a fix-it ticket because it's against the law to not treat a sick and suffering animal. People didn't have the money to do that. I'll come back to the vet price issue in a minute.
That's the next on my list,
yes,
Carol. It's the next on my list.
Some people turned in their suffering pets thinking that there was a vet at the shelter who would treat them.
Yeah.
They didn't realize that that rarely happens, or that some kind person would then adopt them and take care of them, or the pet was terminally ill. And there's a terrible cliche in the rescue world and among all of us that people dump their old dogs and walk out with a puppy. And in some cases, those old dogs, they're not dumped. It's their time to die. And people either don't know about humane euthanasia or can't afford it or can't access it. It's hundreds of dollars to get a vet to put your dog down, as you probably know.
I was just going to give an actual ticket price for that. We are a middle-class family. We paid $900 for an at-home pet euthanasia because our dog was so huge. It's money that I would spend again, but
you have it. You have that money.
Well, even we barely had that money.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing puts everything in perspective when you really look at the numbers.
And the sad thing about euthanasia in a shelter is it's done humanely, but you can't be with your animal.
Yeah.
And so you're setting it in there to die alone.
Yes.
So people lose their housing because they have pets. People try to find affordable housing, and there simply isn't any that will accept a pet, or they won't accept a large dog, or they won't accept a pit bull, or they won't accept two dogs. And we're like critically short of affordable housing in this country right now, but we're even shorter of housing that accepts pets. There's also a new trend, which I wrote about for Dame a couple of years ago, where people are charging pet deposits and pet rent. And it may be another $50 a month, $60 a month. If you are working a low wage job and you have kids and maybe your budget is stretched to the max, that $50 simply isn't doable.
Exactly. And also too, as your book illuminates, it's sometimes used as an excuse to evict renters.
Yes, renters, sometimes landlords look the other way when a family moves in with pets, and then suddenly the neighborhood is appreciating and rents could go up. And so suddenly it's not okay to have that dog. And people are faced with the decision to either give up their pet or lose their housing. And I think it's said in the rescue world too many times, well, that's part of my family. I'd rather sleep on the street than give up my dog. But it's not so easy to say that when you really might have to sleep on the street.
That's exactly right. Let me touch on those vet bills for a minute, because I think that what you did was so enlightening and horrifying to realize all of the factors that go into these very high vet bills that we're all seeing, and how destructive they are for people who can't afford it, who can barely afford their rent. And even if you can't afford your rent, it's still such a high price tag, a high entry point to pet ownership. You talk about hedge fund buying up practices and also the complication of student loan debts for vets who can't absorb
Right.
these prices. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, it was actually shocking to me. I mean, I knew about high prices, but once I started realizing the effects of corporate consolidation of the veterinary industry was really surprising. So you have now one large corporation, Mars Pet Care, which owns VCA, which had already started buying up smaller practices years before that.
And this is Mars that has the candy division.
This is Mars, the candy
Same.
company. Yes, they own. Oh gosh, what have I'm going to look at my notes. That they own Banfield Pet Hospitals, Blue Pearl Specialty Care Centers, 5 major pet food brands, and diagnostic equipment, and that's one company. And then you have venture capital firms buying up some of the smaller specialty practices too. And maybe it shouldn't happen, but it does. When there's less competition, prices go up. And vets suffer too, because they're supposed to upsell services. And some vets are now under pressure because their salaries are part commission when the vet businesses are corporate owned. And so they have, you go to the vet and they want to give you fancy food and do lots of tests, and they're under their own pressure. They graduate with enormous levels of debt. It's as bad as med school.
I thought that was such a fascinating aspect that's impacting pet owners every day. We have a question that I think speaks to what Lori is doing, and we can use this as a launch pad to talk more about Lori's work. But the question is, if you don't have the money to feed a pet, why have one if you might have to get rid of it?
Okay, there are 2 answers to that. There's the moral answer and there's the practical answer. The moral answer is, I've seen studies that suggest that a near half of the United States population will spend some time at or at the poverty level. So you're saying then that a huge number of people are simply not entitled to have the love of a pet. And what if you have a pet and something happens and you lose your job, or you have a huge medical bill of your own and you fall into poverty? Does that mean at that point you should get rid of your pet? I've seen studies that suggest that pets are extremely important to children. So do we tell people who maybe don't have a whole lot else in their life that their children don't get the love of a pet, that they don't get the love of a pet? Right. So those are moral questions to think about. Also, a lot of people who don't have money get their pets, the pet finds them. They'll take in a street dog, they'll take in a stray. And they do it because it's the right thing to do and because the animal is suffering. Right. The practical issue is we're now at a situation where the shelters are absolutely overflowing. And that's true in LA, it's true all across the nation. And we've been told since the latest iteration of the humane movement began in the 90s that we should adopt, don't shop. There'll be no more pets in the shelter if everybody will just adopt. Well, if you say people who don't have, or who aren't rich, who aren't middle class, don't adopt dogs, who's going to adopt those dogs in the shelter? You just cut off millions and millions of people from the ability to adopt.
Which leads us to another fascinating element of this book, and that is the class of people who are in the rescue movement predominantly, right? Can you talk about that? I thought that was so insightful, and it really mirrors my own experience. Mostly white women, mostly affluent women.
Well, it's not surprising, really, because if you look at like the history of social movements, temperance movements, suffragettes movements, it's mostly middle and upper class women. And why is that? It's because this work is unpaid and it's tiring, and sometimes it's not only unpaid but requires the outlay of money. And who has the resources and time to do that? It's not somebody who's working 2 jobs.
Right.
So, and you know what? That's fine. If you are an affluent person with time and resources to do good in one way or another, fantastic. What a great way to reward, to use your privilege.
Right.
The problem that I saw when it came down to the rescue movement was that if that's your frame of reference, it can make it very hard for you to see how other people live and can make you judgmental.
And how other people care for pets. I'm thinking of my own experience. My uncle was a rancher, and the way that he cared for his dog, who he loved very much, would not be considered appropriate by
Right.
our suburban standards. But yet that dog was loved and cared for all of its life, just
You
not.
know, that my childhood dog, when I look back on my childhood dog, my parents were middle class, white collar professionals. We were terrible pet owners by
Yeah,
today's standards. The dog
right,
didn't get to the dog park. The dog lived in the yard in a house. I mean,
right,
we have our standards at this point of what constitutes proper dog care with enrichment and organic food and single source protein, and it just gets more extreme every minute. I'm guilty of it too, but I can
right,
understand that not everybody has the time and money to do that.
right. Listen, my dog gets IAMS and I feel bad about that, right?
I
But we
know.
should. Another interesting aspect, going back to Lori Weiss,
Yeah.
is she came from a traumatic background.
Yes.
You talk about how common this is in the rescue movement, that there's this element of saving the animal in a way that allows you to save an element of yourself.
I don't know if it's trauma necessarily, but I think there's a certain number of people who maybe were let down by humans.
Mhm.
And I think that's what we all love so much about dogs and cats, because they won't leave us. They don't care what we look like. They don't care how much money we make. They just love us. And so to be involved in rescue means to be dealing with this population that is really grateful, and the act of rescuing. I mean, you had a rescue dog. I've had three.
I've
It's
had
real.
many. I've had
It's
rescue horses. We have rescue goats. We have a rescue donkey. I mean, rescue is our thing.
watching them, if they're scared when you get them, and if they were lost, if they lived on the street, it's really gratifying to watch them blossom. And in a world where a lot of what we do doesn't seem to address wider problems, and we're helpless in the face of a lot of grief,
Much. Yeah.
it's really something you can actually do it. You can save a life. You can make this being happy when it wasn't happy before, and it's really an incredibly gratifying and a great source of power.
That's why the human equation in this formula is so difficult, I think, for many of us.
Yes.
Going back to Lori's quote about it's a poverty problem. People are put in difficult financial situations, in poverty even, and the end result is the pet suffering. But we want to help the pet and not the not so charming human.
Right, because we blame people for their
Exactly.
situations, and I think we're less likely to do that than we had been in the past, because we understand the problem of addiction, and of being brought up in a chaotic childhood, and of facing racism and other kinds of discrimination, that these things have real effects on people, and that ending up in poverty or on the street, maybe it's a result of some bad choices, but there's more to it than that.
I want to pivot just for a moment and talk about the actual writing of the book, because Carol, you did such tremendous reporting in this book. You use Lori's experience as the tent pole, if you will, of the
Yeah.
story. And you follow her for a very long time, but you also do so much secondary reporting. Can you talk a little bit about how long it took you to do it, and some of the challenges maybe you faced in putting
Forever. It took forever.
forever. The official answer, it took forever.
Because it was clear to me that Lori's story, if I only told Lori's story, it was just another dog story. And I thought from what she explained to me that it was more than a dog story. And it took me a really long time to figure out how to fit those things together. And for years, I was telling people I've got pieces and I don't know how to stitch them. And people were saying, well, maybe this isn't a book you should write. Maybe, maybe this
Maybe you
really
should just
doesn't
do
work.
articles. I'll do a lot of articles.
Well, somebody said,
did.
one of my good friends said to me, you sure this is really not just a long article? I said, no, I could feel it in my head that it was like, get bigger in other ways. But it wasn't, two things happened that made it come together, which was Lori started taking up with and helping these series of RV dwellers in Southeast Los Angeles.
South Los Angeles, right.
And it was a new effort that mirrored what she'd done downtown, and it was dramatic. So it was something I could use. And the other thing was the death of poor George Floyd, when the nation started thinking about inequality. And I thought, that's what this is a story about. And so finding all of the ways that inequality played into animals and people became a way that it all fit together. That being said, it was still a nightmare to put it together.
I was going to say, I'm so admiring of what you've done with this book.
I have a stack of paper under my desk that's about 4 feet high that I'm going to take a picture of. It's like, that was where it started, and this is where it ended up,
So show it to every writing class you ever lecture in.
Yeah,
I swear. Well, final question then for you. What has changed for you after doing the book? What do you understand that maybe you didn't understand before? And what would you like all of us to understand?
I think the understanding is the interconnection of everything, and that issues of poverty and class and race and gender really show up in ways that maybe aren't apparent to us at first.
Carol, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I feel changed by it. So everyone, you have to get this book and do what I did and bookmark it and places where you have to refer back again. Rethinking Rescue, Dog Lady, and the Story of America's Forgotten People and Pets. Carol, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And so that's it for tonight, folks. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Cathryn, for joining us. It was really illuminating, the conversation. Also, thanks to our Oz Behind the Curtain, as always, Julie Corlett. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's conversation. Bookish will be back next month with another lineup of great authors. Let me just give you two little hints. There might be Moon Zappa and there might be Garth Greenwell, but keep checking in for more details. Meanwhile, remember, you can catch up on our past episodes by going to scng.com/virtual events. And again, if you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button right now. Support local journalism. If you'd like to share your thoughts from today, or if you have additional questions, please email us at events@scng.com. Or if you want to give me suggestions on the show directly, or if you have ideas, reach out at sdunn@scng.com. And remember, you can always find great books coverage in our newspapers every single day and online at our sites. There's even our Book Pages newsletter you can sign up for. It's free. And here's a little video from our books editor, Eric Peterson, to tell us what's coming up.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, everybody. I just want to let you know, this weekend on Sunday, we've got a great story from Peter Larson. It's about Southern California bookstores. He talked to some booksellers and the challenges they've faced. You may have heard about Diesel, a bookstore in Brentwood, being for sale. Also, Vroman's is for sale. He also talked to some booksellers who bought a bookstore and have been running it now for 20 years. And it's a really terrific story. It's got a lot of detail. It's got, if you love books, you're going to love this story. It's also online right now, so you don't have to wait. We've also got coming, I just spoke with an award-winning translator and she gave me some recommendations for great translations. It's Women in Translation Month, and you're just gonna be happy to be finding out about some of these books, because I sure was. As soon as she was telling me, I was already trying to order them. So I hope that you'll check that out in the book pages. That's in the newsletter. It's free, and you can get that. And I'm just looking down at my notes, and it says more books. So apparently we'll have more books both in the newsletter and in the paper, and I hope that you'll check it out. Thanks so much.
All right, folks. See you next time. Thanks again.